Welcome back, everyone. As most of you know, the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the brand new one, M1 Pro and M1 Max models just came out, and I wanted to actually compare it against my older MacBook that I actually used to use not too long ago, just last year. That was my main laptop, my 2015 Intel MacBook Pro, the 15-inch model, and I mean, what I can tell you is that it's crazy how many similarities and how much overlap both of these MacBooks actually have. Now, of course, if you have all the money in the world, getting the new 16-inch MacBook is definitely the better way to go. And this is what I will tell you. Going from that 15-inch Intel MacBook all the way to that new 16-inch M1 MacBook Pro, that is the perfect upgrade. That is the perfect lifecycle change that Apple could have ever made. They really butchered those other MacBooks that came out, but with this MacBook, the new 16-inch one, Apple has made it so all those 2015 MacBook users, even the 13-inch MacBook, going to the 16-inch one or that 14-inch one are solid options, and I'm so happy Apple actually did that. And coming from somebody who actually still uses those 2015 MacBooks, I have two of them that I use for different things, they are actually still very solid machines. And if you're okay with a little bit of a slower machine, if you're okay with sometimes the fans ramping up and kind of overheating your machine, those MacBooks are still extremely solid, and I'm humongous fans of those MacBooks as well. So you can't really go wrong with either one of these. Of course, I would recommend the 16-inch MacBook, but the funny thing is the amount of similarity between both of these devices. With that 16-inch, well, with the 15-inch MacBook, one of the best counterpoints and one of the best reasons to still pick up that MacBook was the port selection. That was the last MacBook that had pretty much all of the ports. From 2016 onwards up until these new MacBooks, all of these MacBooks had USB Type-C ports, and that's it. That's all the ports. They had the headphone jack too, but that's all the ports Apple made on these MacBooks. And they really sacrificed a lot of, I guess, image quality that they had of these specific MacBooks, because people were like, oh, I'm just going to go pick up the old MacBook. Keep your 2015 one. And a lot of people think, and so do I, that the 2015 MacBook was the last best MacBook. And that's why I was using it for so long, because I needed the SD card slot. And that's really all I needed was the SD cards. The USB Type-A ports, the HDMI port, I could live without, but that SD card slot was the main thing I used. And now with this 16-inch MacBook, Apple went ahead and brought back that SD card. They brought back MagSafe, and they brought back the HDMI port. So it's insane that Apple backtracked like this, but better late than never. So with the port selection, even though it doesn't have USB Type-A ports, I actually kind of prefer not having USB Type-A ports anymore, to be honest. That's coming from a 2015 MacBook Pro still user. I still use these things, and the main reason for that is because of the amount of capability that those USB Type-C ports have. You have the ability of docking them up to these monitors through that port. You can charge it via that port as well, and even though it costs a little bit more money to buy a monitor that supports Thunderbolt, it is honestly, I think, worthwhile, because you only have to plug in one port to power the whole entire dongles and all those things. With my older MacBook, I had to plug it in with HDMI, then I had to plug in MagSafe, then I had to plug in all these other things I wanted to straight from my MacBook, and it was kind of a process. But that's pretty much the physicality outside. The 15-inch MacBook and the 16-inch MacBook are kind of the same size here and there. I still think my 15-inch one is still really big, but the 16-inch one is also still very thin, and I'm actually a huge fan of the 16-inch MacBook Pro for sure. Now, price tag wise, of course, you can probably buy a 15-inch one for like $600 or $700. I think a year and a half ago, I picked up that MacBook for about $700. I was able to increase, I think, the RAM or SSD in it or something like that. Maybe not the RAM. It was something I could increase. And I'm glad I did it because it gave me more storage. I think it was the SSD. Now with the 16-inch MacBook Pro, it starts off at $2,499. I'm sure that's going to come in the refurbished market in a couple of months, so we'll probably wait out until those things come up. But I'm going to tell you, for that price tag, this is a MacBook that can pretty much, stay with you forever. It's not like tomorrow this thing's going to be outdated. This MacBook could probably last for several years. And I think that's one of the best things about it. You can easily go pick up this MacBook and it's going to last you for many years, and you won't have to worry about anything for a while. And with the 15-inch MacBook, that was kind of the same thing. If you still own one, it's still in pretty good quality. It does not feel cheap, and I think a lot of people still use and own that device for sure. Now, when you open up these things, the screens are a little bit different. The 15-inch MacBook obviously had a beautiful Retina display, no notch or anything, but I still think that was a beautiful panel, and even now it still completely holds up in my opinion. With this new 16-inch MacBook, it's kind of more of the same, to be honest, but you do get a notch, which is awesome. The panel itself looks beautiful, but the best thing about it is that you do get a ProMotion display. So although the size has increased, although you get a notch, the notch may be a downgrade to some people. I actually kind of don't mind it, but that ProMotion display is something that is not, debatable. It is beautiful. You have the option if you want to turn it off if you don't like it, but I love ProMotion. And going from that 60 hertz panel from that 2015 MacBook to now that 120 hertz panel, there's a massive difference, and I'm a huge fan of this new MacBook Pro in terms of that. But on top of that, you get a lot of similarity. Like I said, the ports are kind of the same thing, kind of going on. The keyboards are almost the same. The Magic Trackpad has gotten improvements here and there. The microphone that's built in of the M1 MacBooks are now much better than those other Intel ones. But throughout my whole almost 6 minutes talking about this MacBook, I haven't even touched the performance, and that's one of the best things that's probably you're going to be getting from that Intel MacBook to this M1 MacBook. The performance increase coming from these two things is crazy. This Intel MacBook, right? I liked it. I think it was good in terms of the performance. It was my main machine for a long time, but I'll be the first one to tell you, although it still holds up, when you go to something like even the base M1 MacBook Air, the performance difference is insane. You notice that the fans aren't ramping up all the time. You don't have to wait all the time for certain things. My video, I was exporting tons of videos every single day on that MacBook, and I think it did a good job handling it, but you don't notice it until you go to the new MacBooks, how much better these new ones are. These new M1 MacBook Pros go up to 10 core CPUs, the 16-inch one that's base, the 10 core CPU. You can go up to 30 cores on the GPU, which is insane, and you can get up to 64 gigs of RAM and 8 terabytes of storage. That is an insane jump from the Intel MacBook, the 2015 one, to this new M1 MacBook Pro, the 16-inch one. And here's the other thing. The numbers, we can just put the numbers away. For my personal use, you are getting a much better performing machine. You notice things don't hang, you notice that spinning wheel doesn't come up as much, and you notice you're just having less issues overall. And for me personally, from using that MacBook for so many years, I'll be honest, you guys know this, we run into a lot of issues on our MacBook. Even my M1 MacBook Pro gives me some issues here and there, but that 2015 one was a workhorse. I loved it a lot. But I really do kind of just thank myself at updating, because when we have MacBooks like that, we're like, oh, we don't have to upgrade. But you do know you're missing out on some things, but you can't justify the purchase. I'm so glad I switched over to an M1 MacBook Pro, and now that these new 16-inch MacBooks are coming out with all these ports, with the HDMI port, with the SD card slot, 3 USB Type-C ports, ProMotion display, better battery life in my opinion too, because 2015 ones have degraded for like 6 years now. This one, better battery life, Touch ID on the Touch ID, no touch bar, a really nice keyboard, tremendous build quality, amazing battery life. I can go on, but I think you guys know by now that the M1 MacBook Pro, the 16-inch one, is probably the one I would recommend everyone to pick up. It is a beautiful MacBook. It has so much capability, and I do think coming from the 2015 MacBooks, even onwards, from 2015, 2016, all the way up to the new 13-inch M1 MacBook Pros, this is that one upgrade everybody was waiting for. And I think if you're wanting to pick up a MacBook, this is the one you should go get. Or the 14-inch one, whichever one you want. I'll probably make a separate video talking about that. But you're getting just a much better machine. And I could not recommend picking up an M1 MacBook Pro 16-inch model enough. It is perfect enough for a lot of people. It's not perfect in general. There's some issues here and there. But I think it's that perfect upgrade that everyone's been looking for from that 2015 MacBook Pro. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly, everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.